Hello and welcome to Headlines Special. The formal dissolution of the OSCE Minsk Group, which was once tasked to advance international mediation efforts to achieve a negotiated settlement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, has been one of Baku's key preconditions for achieving a peace deal with Yerevan for some considerable time. As early as January 2024, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev stated in no uncertain terms, in fact unequivocally, that this group's de jure disbandment should precede the signing of a peace treaty between the two countries. In fact, since the end of the Second Karabakh War of 2020, which saw Azerbaijan defeat Armenia and recover its territorial integrity, assuming direct control over the considerable part of its internationally recognized Karabakh region, in Baku's view, the OSCE Minsk Group has been a meaningless entity in need of being resigned to the dustbin of history. The argument for Baku has been very straightforward from the very beginning. That is, the restoration of its territorial integrity by military means and the removal of the subject of the status of the former Nagorno-Karabakh region of Azerbaijan from the agenda of negotiations was tantamount to OSCE Minsk Group losing its raison d'être. For the very problem this entity was created to solve had already been solved by that time. However, back then, neither Armenia nor the then co-chair countries, Russia, United States and France, publicly espoused Azerbaijani worldview on this very subject. Of course, a lot has changed since November 2020. In October 2022, in Prague, Armenia recognized Azerbaijan's territorial integrity. In September 2023, Azerbaijan fully restored its de facto sovereignty over the remainder of the Karabakh region. And since late 2023, the negotiations between these two countries have been purely bilateral, as acknowledged by both parties. And more than that, as to the formal dissolution of the OSCE Minsk Group, which has been de facto or clinically dead since February 2022, when the co-chair countries ceased to coordinate with each other, Armenia is also slowly coming to Azerbaijan's worldview, with clear indications being given that joint application to dissolve this group is indeed in the offing. Somewhat intriguingly, but not so surprisingly, Russian Foreign Minister spokesperson Maria Zakharova recently reiterated Moscow's view that since on the 6th of October 2022, by virtue of a joint statement of the President of Azerbaijan, the Prime Minister of Armenia, the President of France and the President of the Council of Europe adopted in Prague, Yerevan effectively recognized Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, Karabakh included. Since that point, Minsk Group has lost its purpose. The view maintained by Russia has its own intricate elements and has become what it is today only gradually, and one may argue not so willingly. In particular, bearing in mind that in late October 2022, President Vladimir Putin almost accused Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan for agreeing to recognize Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, suggesting back then that this would not lead to a solution that might be within the best interest of Yerevan. Joining me now today are Rusif Husseinov, Director of Topchubashev Center, think tank based in Baku, Azerbaijan. Glenn Howard, Chairman and Founder of Saratoga Foundation, and also former President of the Jamestown Foundation, joining from Washington, D.C. And also Ambassador Andrei Baklanov, Deputy Head of Association of Russian Diplomats, joining from Moscow. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. My first question is going to be addressed to Ambassador Baklanov. Ambassador Baklanov, many analysts would say that Russia was only forced by virtue of factual circumstances on the ground to accept the dissolution of the OSCE Minsk Group as an inevitable development and publicly concur with Azerbaijan on this subject. And recently, President of Belarus, Lukashenko, said something very interesting. He said that he and Vladimir Putin, back in October 2022, were astonished when they heard that Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan recognized Khankandy in its outskirts as part of Azerbaijan in Prague on the 6th of October. And what is very, very clear to everybody is that, bearing in mind what Vladimir Putin said in late October, Russia was sort of forced to accept this reality. What is your take on the subject on the whole?
Well, first of all, I'd like to greet all of you. It's a good company. I'm very pleased to be with you. Well, and I'm ready, of course, to comment what is going on. Well, actually, as far as the participation in Minsk Group is concerned, Maria Zakharova mentioned only one reason, which doesn't seem to be the dominant reason for us. So she said that this format just lost its purpose and well, it doesn't work. Well, it's okay, but there is much more important, reason for us not to participate and not to give any signals within this group. We lost. I'll tell you frankly what we feel in Moscow. We lost interest in having any contacts with the present day leaders and representatives of some of the European countries, especially France and Germany. And our passion lost a few days ago when we didn't have the invitation for the meeting in former concentration camp, which we liberated. Then representatives of European countries were present in Poland, except us, except the liberators. We lost in Poland 600,000 people. You will say that it doesn't have any direct liaison with the question which we are discussing. No, it has. It has, because we are not interested in having any format, bilateral or multilateral format, with those people who are neglecting the history, our sacrifice during the Second World War. So it has influence for all what we do have or don't have with the representatives of Europe, including the Minsk Group. So, well, this is the second reason, in addition to what Zakharova said. That's why we just lost the interest in participation in such formats.
Mr. Howard, why do you think Russia was astonished in October 2022? And also, effectively, my second question is that when it became clear to you that OSCE Minsk Group was practically dead, was it in November 2020 when President Aliyev said that status was sort of removed from the agenda of negotiations? He said the status went to hell. Was it in February 2022 when the co-chairs ceased to coordinate, or was it perhaps in September 2023 when Azerbaijan restored its de facto sovereignty over the rest of Karabakh?
Well, according to my sources, it was in 2020. I mean, that was the last official Minsk Group meeting through that format. And so there hasn't been any meetings since then. So it's basically has fallen into the dustbin of history. And sadly, a lot of diplomats will probably no longer be able to go to Vienna to attend OSCE meetings and live off of the nice cuisine in Vienna and the coffee. So I think that this is a welcome event. I think it's, I've always felt that the OSCE was overdue and ineffective, and it requires agreement among all the various parties. It was created in the aftermath of the breakup of the Soviet Union as a way to facilitate negotiations and peacekeeping, but it's basically, it's overdue and gone. And so today, all of us sitting here and speaking, Russians, Americans, Azerbaijanis, we all, and now Armenians, all believe that it's no longer relevant. So I agree. I just think we should just move on and save the money that we spend on the OSCE. Both the countries involved, Armenia and Azerbaijan, in negotiations are moving close to an agreement. So they don't need outside parties. And as Pashinyan himself acknowledged, it's basically no longer needed. So I think the American perspective is basically President Trump has come in Washington, and he's now cutting all these aid and assistance to all these organizations. He certainly ordered a freeze on it. And so you've heard of the term military industrial complex. Well, in America, we have something called the nonprofit industrial military complex that makes a lot of money off of these NGOs and assistance that's provided. So the OSCE is certainly going to be, a lot of people will be looking for jobs. So I just don't see the United States supporting any more format. We'll see with Secretary of State Rubio, but I don't suspect that they will be very involved in this at all. And I think the days, the acknowledgement by Moscow and Azerbaijan, and the welcome news from Azerbaijan is certainly going to It's acknowledging what we already know. So I'll stop there.
Rasul Husseinov, what have you made of Maria Zakharova's latest statement? And I mean, for many analysts in Azerbaijan, it seems that the question of the joint application by Azerbaijan and Armenia to achieve this legal dissolution of OSCE Minsk Group is also a question of building mutual trust, because I think Azerbaijani president a couple of times said that if Armenia does not have any territorial claim towards Azerbaijan, then why they are so interested in preserving this institution. What is your view on the subject?
Yeah, Orkhan, I would say the Minsk Group has been defunct, virtually defunct for over a decade, actually, because the decade preceding the Second Karabakh War was actually dominated by Russia, which, having sidelined the Minsk Group co-chairs from the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace, like talks over Nagorno-Karabakh, had the lead role. The 2020 war and the subsequent Operation Karabakh, which restored Azerbaijan's sovereignty over the territory, made the Minsk Group no longer relevant. I personally believed the Minsk Group co-chairing countries would struggle for some time in order to preserve the platform. But even without Armenia-Azerbaijan joint bid, joint application, West-Russia collaboration in these circumstances look very, very unlikely. So not only is the Minsk Group defunct, but the whole the OSCE is effectively paralyzed.
Indeed. Ambassador Baklanov, do you believe that there was actually something fundamentally wrong about that mechanism that was at the heart of OSCE Minsk Group from the very beginning? So the system, the mechanism created there was bound to be dysfunctional, or do you think it was actually down to the difference between Azerbaijan and Armenia because of those reasons that OSCE Minsk Group actually failed to achieve anything tangible, which effectively led to the war of 2020? Because I know that different American ambassadors, for example, Ambassador Kozlarich, I think once said that, after all, the OSCE as a mechanism was supposed to bring parties together. They were not able to impose any conditions upon the parties, and there were some other people reflecting, saying the self-same. What is your view on this?
My opinion is that from the very start, now it's clear. It was not clear at the very outset of the story, at the beginning of the functioning of this format. But now it's absolutely clear that it was doomed to failure, because in addition to very serious differences between Armenia and Azerbaijan, there was no real sincere willingness from the part of the Western countries, to settle down this question for the benefit of the region, of the people's concern, etc. They had their own interest, and it was additionally negative element to the negotiation process. So we now restudying what was happening during these 10-15 years, and we come to the conclusion that the majority of our formats that we had with the Western countries were doomed to failure. It was true about the Ukrainian attempts to make some deal. It was true about this Minsk group. That's what we see now after what happened in reality. Well, the Minsk group did not give any real positive impetus for the whole story, and eventually the decision of Azerbaijan turned to be the most decisive factor of dissolving at least the core of this problem.
Mr. Howard, I think, if memory serves me correctly, once Paul Goebel, former advisor to the US State Secretary, told me that I mean, he's very famous for his famous global plan as well, if we remember that. He said that negotiations should have been sort of bilateral from the very beginning. And the idea of OSCE was sort of wrong from the very beginning. Do you think that Azerbaijan and Armenia back in the 90s could have actually discussed things bilaterally and achieved some sort of tangible result?
Well, I think as long as the Armenians were hiding behind Russian military bases in Gyumri, and that they were quite comfortable with their efforts to delay negotiations. I mean, they were the victors. I mean, come on, they seized Azerbaijani territory and they had the Russian military behind them, but the world has changed. And so the balance of power in the region changed. Azerbaijan took its money and its investments from oil, supported by the United States through the Baku-Ceyhan-Tbilisi pipeline. They used that money to build an army. And so they were able to develop the nationhood of Azerbaijan as a state. And so basically the balance of power in the Caucasus has shifted toward Azerbaijan. And so the Karabakh clans, Kacharyan and others, they lost. So they gambled and they lost in the war. And so now you're basically seeing a kind of a change in the whole dynamics of power in the South Caucasus. And you see Russia with its now entering a fourth year of war, conflict against Ukraine, being weakened by the war. And you're seeing the whole geopolitics of the South Caucasus has changed. So I think that this is basically a reflection of that. And plus you have Pashinyan, who seems to have more of a Western European outlook for Armenia, tilting away from Russia and looking towards the West. And that's beneficial to everybody. I mean, it's beneficial to the United States and to Azerbaijan. So all the countries in the region, except for Russia, probably. So.
Well, Rusif Huseinov, President Aliyev, I think back in May 2024, first time referred to the fact that financially, actually, preserving those mechanisms, OSCE mechanism, is not beneficial, it's not productive, it's not rational. He referred to the high-level planning committee, the institute of the personal representative of the chairman in office, said that all of those institutions should be abolished, and it looks like that Armenia and Azerbaijan will apply jointly. So this obstacle will be removed. How hopeful are you that once that institution is disbanded, de jure, the journey towards that ultimate eventuality called peace treaty between Azerbaijan and Armenia will be much, much easier?
Yeah, you're right. We in Azerbaijan believe that the Karabakh conflict is over. So we are turning the chapter on this conflict and are going to maybe new challenges, new foreign policy priorities. However, the Minsk Group, whether it is dysfunctional or not, whether it is defunct or not, would and could always remain as a relic of the past, which would always used by different actors for their own gains, of course, or as a certain tool of leverage of Azerbaijan in order to revive over and over again the Karabakh issue. For almost 35 years, the people in Azerbaijan, I mean, not only the political establishment and the expert community, but also average citizens, we had never lived with illusions. We never had actually invested our expectations on the international community or entities like the Minsk Group, because for us, such entities served rather as a procrastination of the status quo than solving the problem and restoring the justice. So I think in these and one more nuance. I think between 2020 and now, the Minsk Group could have still been preserved, and it could have found a new identity had the co-chairs captured the momentum and switched their interest from the Karabakh issue over to the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process. But this momentum was also lost. And then the military conflict in Ukraine also made West-Russia collaboration impossible.
I remember that back in, I think it was late 2020, when President Aliyev received OSCE co-chairs, he said that I had not invited you. And I think there was a very interesting discussion there. But if you want to be here and discuss certain issues, you're more than welcome. But I think that there's nothing that we can discuss because the problem that you needed to solve had been sorted out. And then of course, in April 2021, I think the OSCE Minsk Group, they issued a statement saying that they're still relevant. They refer to all of those elements of that terminology that evolved over the past 2 decades. So you think that it could have actually retained its relevance had it focused on the issues of humanitarian nature and moving away from the Karabakh issue. Is that what you said, Rusif?
Exactly. I mean, they could have still found a new identity and new challenges for themselves. The Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process, which is now purely bilateral, or demining, resettlement, reconstruction, humanitarian issues, bringing civil societies from two countries together, track 1.5 diplomacy, and so on. But as I said already, this momentum was also lost.
Ambassador Baklanov, there is a school of thought in line with which the wider conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, wider conflict, is not just about Karabakh, but also about the importance of Azerbaijan having direct access to its Nakhchivan exclave. So the territorial dimension of southern Armenia, also part of that wider conflict. How do you see the future of this process? Azerbaijan has made it very clear that it does not have any territorial claim towards Armenia, but Azerbaijan wants direct access to Nakhchivan. And we all know that there is, in line with Article 9 of the 10 November Declaration, Armenia is obligated to provide this access. There is an issue of Russian control as well. Armenia and Azerbaijan interpret that particular article in a different way. In the light of what I've suggested, what is your concept of the future of the negotiations between these two countries, and to what extent you believe that compromise between them could also benefit the interests of Russia in the South Caucasus?
What you are saying now, to the opinion of Moscow, this is the core of the remaining problems, the core. And it's also the most important issue that we are sharing with both Azerbaijan and Armenia. The majority of our attention is exactly dealing with the study of this problem, the problem of access, of mutual access to the places they would like and to be, and also the transportation. For us, this is the part of the very big, extensive project of North-South, the transport route. The transport route, from northern areas of our country up to southern areas of Eurasia, etc. So this is a very important issue, much more important than the situation on the spot. Yes, it's true. We are dealing with that. We are very much interested in having more productive negotiations with the borders, both countries concerned. At the same time, I'll be frank. We do not believe that any external parties could be of some additional help for us to settle down this problem. Mainly, this is the matter of the three countries concerned: Azerbaijan, Armenia, Russian Federation. Well, and after that, some other neighboring countries, including Iran, also inside, and it will be part of the little bit more broad negotiation process. Yes, it's very, very important, and this is at this juncture the main route of the development of the affairs if we want to have the peaceful situation. And the last sentence I would like to reiterate, it's that it's the problem of common use. It's the possibility of us, of all of us, to share some positive results, including the financial assets. So if we settle down these problems, eventually it will give much money for all of us, and it will be very useful for the development of our economy and raising the level of living of our people.
Mr. Howard, what's your take on the Zangezur corridor project? Azerbaijan and Armenia have been discussing this subject for the past 5 years, almost 5 years now, and I earlier referred to former U.S. State Secretary, former advisor to the U.S. State Secretary, Mr. Paul Goebel. His plan was based on the idea of swap, and he stated that actually back then he was advising Armenians to relinquish sort of their sovereignty over that southern Armenian territory connecting mainland Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan through Mehri in return for getting some element of control, formal sort of legal control over the Karabakh region. And then his argument was that if you do not compromise, it is quite possible that Azerbaijan will restore its full sovereignty over Karabakh, and there's no guarantee you will retain that particular overland passage territory. What is your take on this subject? Do you think it should be a bilateral issue between Azerbaijan and Armenia, or do you think that some third party could potentially help these two countries come to some sort of compromise?
No, I don't think there'll be a role for a third party. I think the only time that they've mentioned third parties was in this EU monitoring mission that Pashinyan circulated. There's been some discussion, and Azerbaijan was supporting kind of this idea that that the corridor would be kind of like the Kaliningrad railway that goes through Lithuania, whereas Azerbaijan would operate a railway that would go through Armenian territory. There would be no Armenians on board the train, that it would operate somewhat similar to like Kaliningrad. That's what President Aliyev told me about 2 years ago when we had a meeting. And I know that idea is there, but I know that Pashinyan has dropped the idea of some sort of EU monitoring. So basically, we're kind of back to Azerbaijan and Armenia trying to resolve this issue. But whenever Armenia kind of drags its feet, Azerbaijan is very adamant and firm in its position with Armenia that this issue needs to be resolved, but they're doing it incrementally and moving in that direction. So I don't think there's going to, it's impossible, in my opinion, that there can be a renewed conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, because Armenia is so weak right now militarily. But Azerbaijan is in a much stronger position. I mean, Turkey is neighboring Armenia. They're strongly supportive of Azerbaijan and its territorial integrity. So the positions overall is that everybody's trying to give, I think people in Baku are trying to give Pashinyan time to resolve Zangezur. And I do think there is a clock ticking. I don't think Azerbaijan's patience is indefinite. So I do think that, but there still are positive signs. I mean, there was promises, an idea that Pashinyan was promising that they would resolve the Karabakh by the end of 2024. But that didn't happen. So, but Azerbaijan's still being very patient, and they're making progress. But at the same time, Azerbaijan is reiterating its ties with Iran, trying to improve the economic connections through Azerbaijan, Iranian Azerbaijan. So that's trying, you know, they're trying to negotiate and move forward there. And that's a form of economic pressure that Azerbaijan is applying against Armenia to show Armenia that it can continue to circumvent Armenia if it drags its feet in Zangezur.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Sorry, my last question is going to be to you. We've got literally 1 minute, but it's a very brief sort of question, and I hope for a brief answer. We're discussing Zangezur corridor with you on a number of occasions, and now in early 2025, in the pecking order of priorities. Where do you see this Zangezur corridor from Azerbaijan's perspective? Do you think it's now, after the fact that Azerbaijan restored its sovereignty over Karabakh, it is indeed number one priority for the nation in terms of its regional projects?
It's amongst the key priorities for Azerbaijan's foreign policy. I would rather formulate it. Peace deal, normalization with Armenia, Zangezur corridor. They go within one package.
I see. Well, thank you very much indeed for a very concise and brief answer. I'm very grateful to all of you, Recep Hüseyinov, Ambassador Baklanov, and also Mr. Glenn Howard. Grateful to all of you. Thank you very much indeed.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
This for Recep Hüseyinov, director of the Topçubaşov think tank based in Baku, Mr. Glenn Howard, the founder and chairman of the Saratoga Foundation, and also Ambassador Baklanov, deputy head of the Association of Russian Diplomats. See you very soon indeed.